My family holds me responsible for my sister's wedding completely imploding. The bizarre part is, I was sipping a margarita on a beach in Mexico, 1,000 miles away, when the groom decided to make a run for it. They're convinced that if I had been there, I could have somehow intervened and saved the day. But they're missing the entire point. My absence wasn't the catastrophe. To them, my very existence was. To really get why this is so twisted, you need a map of my family's galaxy. My older sister, Olivia, wasn't just the sun, she was the entire sky. She was luminous, breathtaking, and my parents were her dedicated stargazers, their lives spent charting her brilliant course and celebrating her light. And me, I was a forgotten satellite they'd lost the signal to years before. I was still technically in their orbit, which meant I was helplessly dragged along by the gravitational pull of her drama, whether I liked it or not. Growing up, calling Olivia the golden child would be a massive understatement. She was the star of every show. She had perfect grades, was the captain of the cheerleading squad, and possessed a social calendar that made politicians look like hermits. Our family home wasn't so much a home as it was the Olivia Museum. Trophies from her debate tournaments and soccer championships were crammed onto the fireplace mantel. The den walls were covered in framed certificates and newspaper clippings about her achievements. My mother had a habit of working Olivia's latest triumph into any conversation, whether she was talking to the UPS driver or the dental hygienist. I was her shadow, her polar opposite. I was the quiet kid who found more comfort in the hushed aisles of a library than in the roar of a football stadium. I was an artist, happiest when I was locked away in my room with a sketchpad, creating entire universes with just a pencil and paper. My victories were personal and quiet, and in my family's currency, that made them worthless. When Olivia was nominated for prom queen, my parents threw a lavish dinner party for all their friends. When I won a prestigious scholarship to a summer arts program, I got a distracted pat on the shoulder and a, "That's great, honey. Now, could you help me set the table?" We're celebrating Olivia's acceptance into her first choice sorority. I learned very early on that seeking their approval was a fool's errand. My validation had to come from within. Despite it all, I was always there for her. I was her emergency contact, her built-in therapist. When a friendship soured or a boyfriend was being difficult, I was the one she called, crying at 2 in the morning. I was the one who spent hours helping her perfect her college application essays. I was the reliable, unseen stagehand in the grand production of her life. So when she announced her engagement to Ethan, a man I genuinely liked, I was truly happy for her. Ethan was kind, grounded, and had a calming presence that seemed to anchor Olivia's more chaotic energy. I assumed my role as the sister of the bride would be a supportive one, and I was ready to play my part. I imagined us laughing over fabric swatches, me giving her honest advice on catering menus, and planning a bachelorette party she would actually enjoy. But the invitation to participate never arrived. The weeks following the engagement stretched into months, and an unsettling quiet grew between us. Then came the social media updates, a flood of professionally lit photos from a chic boutique in the city, showing Olivia and my mother clinking champagne glasses. The caption read, "I found the one. So special to share this moment with my amazing mom." I wasn't there. A few weeks later, another post. A weekend getaway to Austin for her bachelorette party. A montage of women in matching Olivia's bride tribe shirts, singing karaoke and posing in front of murals. I found out about it at the same time as the rest of the world. Just another follower scrolling through a feed. Anytime I tried to gently ask her what was going on, she became a master of deflection. "Oh, the dress fitting? It was totally spontaneous. Mom and I were just in the area and decided to pop in," she'd say, knowing full well those appointments were booked 6 months out. Or the Austin trip was just a small thing with my college friends. You've always hated that kind of scene, so I figured you'd be bored. Every excuse was a flimsy, see-through shield for the truth. I was being methodically and deliberately pushed out. My parents were, of course, completely useless. When I finally broke down and told my mom how hurt I was, she let out a long, weary sigh. "Sarah, please, don't make this about you. This is Olivia's moment. You know how easily she gets overwhelmed. Let's just focus on keeping the peace." In our family, keeping the peace was code for Sarah needs to swallow her feelings so Olivia doesn't have to deal with them. The final, brutal confirmation of my banishment arrived in the mail. Or rather, it arrived in everyone else's mail. My cousin texted me a picture of the invitation. It was stunning, printed on heavy cardstock with elegant gold foil lettering. It formally requested the honor of the recipient's presence at the wedding of Olivia and Ethan. The guest list, I soon gathered from family gossip, was sprawling. It included my parents' golf buddies, Olivia's coworkers she barely spoke to, and some of Ethan's third cousins from out of state. But it didn't include her only sister. That was the breaking point. The polite fictions and passive-aggressive posts melted away, leaving behind the cold, undeniable reality. I was not wanted. A few days later, I cornered Olivia when she stopped by our parents' house to pick something up. I fought to keep my voice steady, but the hurt was a physical weight in my chest. "Just tell me why, Olivia," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Why am I not invited to your wedding?" She wouldn't even look at me. She fussed with a photo frame on the mantel, a picture of her, of course. "Look, Sarah, it's not personal," she said, her tone flat and rehearsed. "We decided to keep the guest list very curated. We only wanted to be surrounded by people who have been truly central to our story as a couple." A bitter, hollow laugh escaped my lips. "Central to your story? You invited Dad's entire poker group. You invited Mom's friends from her book club. I'm your sister. We shared a bedroom for 16 years. How am I not part of your story?" She finally turned to face me, her expression a frustrating mask of irritation. "Do you want me to be honest? Your whole vibe is just a downer. You never have fun at these big events. You just stand in a corner and look like you're judging everyone. I don't want that kind of negative energy at my wedding. I want my pictures to be perfect." So it was personal. It was the most explicit confirmation of what I'd always feared. In the perfectly curated museum of her life, I was a flawed exhibit, a smudge on the glass. My parents, predictably, took her side. "It's her day, Sarah," my father said, refusing to meet my gaze. "She has the right to decide who celebrates with her. Her happiness is the most important thing right now." No one considered my happiness. No one seemed to care that my own family was treating me like a pariah. And in that moment, something deep inside me snapped. The vast reservoir of hurt began to freeze over, solidifying into a cold, hard resolve. They had drawn their line in the sand. Now it was my turn to draw mine. If I wasn't welcome at the celebration, I sure as hell wasn't going to be available for the cleanup. I knew my family dynamic. I knew Olivia. If a single thing went wrong, they would need a scapegoat, and my default role was always to absorb the blame and fix the mess. Not this time. That evening, I went home, opened my laptop, and with a feeling of defiant liberation, I booked a 7-day, all-inclusive, non-refundable vacation to a resort in Cancun. My flight left 2 days before the wedding and returned 4 days after. As I typed in my credit card number, a wave of pure, unadulterated joy washed over me. I packed my swimsuits and sundresses, set an automated out-of-office reply for my work email, and the morning I left for the airport, I powered down my cell phone. I was severing the digital cord that tethered me to their world. I was officially going dark. The day of Olivia's wedding was, for me, paradise. I woke up not to a panicked phone call about a missing flower delivery, but to the gentle sound of waves lapping against the shore. I spent the morning snorkeling, watching schools of brightly colored fish dart through the turquoise water. Later that afternoon, at the exact moment Olivia was scheduled to walk down the aisle, I was strolling along a stretch of perfect white sand, the warm sun on my shoulders. I found an empty lounge chair under a palm tree, ordered a piña colada, and settled in with a good book. I had braced myself for a twinge of regret, a flicker of sadness for what I was missing. But it never came. What I felt instead was a profound, overwhelming sense of peace. It was the peace that comes from being untethered, from not having to perform a role I never wanted. There were no forced smiles, no awkward conversations with distant relatives asking why I wasn't married yet. No need to bite my tongue while my mother delivered a monologue about her perfect daughter. For the first time in my 30 years, I was unapologetically putting myself first, and it felt incredible. I kept my phone off for another full day, completely immersing myself in the blissful silence. But on the third day of my trip, my curiosity finally won. I figured I'd turn it on, see a few hundred wedding photos clogging my feed, feel a brief moment of something, and then get back to my book. I plugged the phone into the wall, and when it finally booted up, a digital dam broke. The screen exploded with a chaotic flood of notifications. 27 missed calls, 54 text messages, 8 voicemails. They were from everyone: my mother, my father, my aunts, my cousins. The sheer volume was staggering, and a knot of dread began to form in my stomach. I scanned the text previews. From Mom, "Sarah, call me the second you get this. It's an emergency." From Dad, "Where in the world are you? Olivia needs you. This is completely unacceptable." From my Aunt Susan, "I never thought you could be so selfish, to abandon your family like this. Olivia is a wreck, and we are all so disappointed in you." Abandon them? They had disowned me. The hypocrisy was so thick I could barely breathe. I ignored the texts and went straight to the most recent voicemail. It was from my mother. Her voice was a ragged, hysterical sob. "How could you do this, Sarah? How could you just vanish? If you had only been here, this never would have happened. She needed you. You have to come home right now." What never would have happened? Confused and now genuinely worried, I called my dad, assuming he'd be the calmer of the two. He picked up on the first ring, his voice thick with a mixture of anger and exhaustion. "Sarah, thank God. Where have you been?" "I'm on vacation, Dad. The vacation I took after I was uninvited from the wedding." "What is going on?" He let out a heavy sigh, and the whole story came tumbling out. The wedding had been a complete and utter disaster. Everything had been set. The guests were in their seats, the string quartet was playing, Olivia was in the bridal suite, looking like a storybook princess. But Ethan, the groom, never appeared at the altar. Just moments before he was supposed to walk out, he'd had a total breakdown. He told his best man he couldn't do it. He slipped out a side door of the venue, got into his car, and drove off. His only explanation was a single text message to Olivia that read, "I am so sorry. I can't do this." Olivia had collapsed into a weeping mess. My mother was beside herself. The guests sat in stunned silence for almost an hour before my father had to take the microphone and make the most humiliating announcement of his life. The perfect wedding, planned with the precision of a military operation, had detonated on the launch pad. And then came the part that made my blood run cold. "Your mother believes, and frankly, I agree," my dad said, his voice dripping with accusation, "that if you had been there, this could have been prevented. You've always been the sensible one. You could have talked to Ethan, calmed him down. At the very least, you should have been here to support your sister. She is your family." I was stunned into silence. A dry, humorless laugh crawled up my throat. "Are you actually listening to the words coming out of your mouth?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Are you seriously trying to pin this on me? The two of you and Olivia spent the last 6 months making it painfully, abundantly clear that my presence was not only not required, but not wanted. I was negative energy, but the second the groom flees the scene, I'm suddenly the one person who could have held the whole thing together. That is absolutely delusional. Sarah, now is not the time for pointing fingers. No, this is precisely the time. I cut him off, my voice sharp and clear. Olivia didn't want me there. She made her choice. She and Ethan are adults who have to live with the consequences of their own actions. I'm on a vacation that I earned, and I am not cutting it short. I will be home when my flight is scheduled to land. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up the phone before he could argue. The beautiful peace I had cultivated was gone, replaced by a slow-burning rage. For the rest of my trip, my phone continued to be a pipeline for their venom. My mother sent long, rambling texts calling me heartless and cruel. My extended family joined the chorus, painting me as the villain who partied while her sister's life fell apart. Olivia herself eventually sent a tear-soaked, type-riddled message accusing me of secretly enjoying her pain. I didn't reply to a single one. I was done. I had been their doormat for the last time. When I finally flew back to the States, I was ready for battle. I expected to walk into a family home thick with resentment and accusations. But the day after I returned, something happened that I never could have predicted. I received a message, not from my family, but from Ethan. It was a long, heartfelt email. He started by apologizing for the chaos he had caused, for the public humiliation he had inflicted on Olivia, and then, bizarrely, for the position he had put me in. I was confused. Why was he apologizing to me? And then I kept reading, and the entire disaster snapped into a shocking new light. He explained that his cold feet were not a last-minute panic. It was a slow-dawning terror that had been building for months. He described the immense pressure from Olivia and my parents to become the perfect husband for their perfect daughter, a role he felt increasingly ill-suited for. He felt his own opinions, desires, and needs being systematically steamrolled in the service of creating a perfect public image. He was, in his words, a well-dressed accessory in the Olivia show. And then came the part that took my breath away. Sarah, he wrote, I know this is going to sound insane, but a huge part of the reason I couldn't go through with it was you. Or, more accurately, the way Olivia treated you. I watched her methodically cut you out of every single part of her wedding. I saw how she talked about you behind your back, how she dismissed you as if you were an annoying inconvenience. I even brought it up to her once. I asked why her own sister wasn't a bridesmaid, why you weren't even at the shower. She just shrugged her shoulders and said that you two were fundamentally different people, and that you wouldn't add anything positive to the experience. It was so cold, so clinical. And for me, it was a massive wake-up call. I started re-examining our own relationship through that lens, and I saw the same pattern everywhere. She did it to me, too, just in smaller, more subtle ways. She dismissed my concerns about our insane budget. She made fun of my musical tastes when we were picking out songs. She cared more about how our relationship looked in her social media posts than how it actually felt when we were alone. Watching her treat you, her own flesh and blood, with such detached cruelty made me realize something terrifying. That's just who she is. She will always prioritize the perfect picture over the actual people in it. I realized I wasn't just marrying Olivia. I was marrying into a family system where only one person's feelings ever mattered. I couldn't sign up for a lifetime of being erased. I saw my future in the way she looked right through you, and I had to get out. I just sat there, staring at my computer screen, utterly speechless. For my entire life, I thought her casual cruelty was a special kind of poison reserved just for me. But it wasn't. It was a core feature of her personality. She had built her dream wedding on a foundation of image and control. And it was so brittle that one person finally seeing the truth was all it took to make the whole thing crumble. A strange mixture of vindication and profound sadness washed over me. I felt a pang of pity for a sister so lost in her own curated reality that she drove away anyone who might have genuinely loved her. But the dominant feeling was one of absolute clarity. Armed with this truth, I finally went to see my parents. I let them have their say. I let them vent all their anger and disappointment. And when they were done, I calmly and quietly told them what Ethan had written in his email. I explained that their perfect daughter's perfect wedding didn't fall apart because I was in Mexico. It fell apart because it was a fraud, orchestrated by someone who valued appearances more than love. They refused to hear it. He's a coward making up excuses to save face, my mother insisted. He's just trying to shift the blame. But I saw a flicker of doubt in my father's eyes. He knew, deep down, that I was telling the truth. Olivia hasn't spoken a word to me since. In her narrative, I am the villain who poisoned her fiancé against her. My parents still keep me at a frosty distance, trapped between their lifelong worship of Olivia and the inconvenient truth of what really happened. But their opinions no longer hold any power over me. I don't know if my family will ever repair itself. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but I no longer lose sleep over it. That trip to Cancun did more than give me a tan. It taught me that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's an act of survival. I spent my whole life living in the cold, distant shadow of my sister's sun. But now, for the first time, I am learning to generate my own heat, to create my own light. And I am never going back into the cold again.